Hello, everyone. Thank you for stopping by the Hoarding Solution podcast and checking out Tuesdays with Tammy. Well, I want to talk about something today that can be challenging. And this does not always apply to every situation, obviously, but sometimes the dysfunctional pieces of our family relationships make it very hard to continue those relationships. And I want to talk about a couple things that might help you on your journey. And in general, we talk about things like low contact, no contact, and even something called gray rock. And so, my question for you, and one I've had to ask myself, is at what point do you allow yourself to go no contact or low contact with someone who is very challenging in your life? And I want to talk about what it takes for you to get to that point. And it can be different for everyone. When you look at low contact, it means you most likely are still in contact with that person, but maybe your boundary is you only talk to them once a week, or maybe you only help schedule medical appointments. And you are very limited in what you do for that person and how much contact you have. Maybe you order their groceries to be delivered instead of you physically going to the store, shopping, or picking them up and delivering them. If you go no contact, it looks like no contact, zero connection, conversation, assistance is being provided to that person by you. And I'll address gray rock briefly, and that is when you're interacting with someone, you give very minimal information, you become rather boring, and don't give away personal details about your life. And this is very important if you're dealing with someone who has narcissistic tendencies, who will use any information you provide as bait or ammo toward you. And in my life, I've chosen these various options, sometimes not even realizing what they were at the time. Like I didn't know it had a name, Gray Rock. Um, but what I will say is your mental health matters too. And a lot of times we're dealing with situations that we escaped from, we weren't part of, we moved on, had a job, we traveled, we were in the military, maybe went to counseling, got a degree, maybe you just went off in a completely different direction with a business or some other career choice, and you have completely moved on with your life. Something occurs and you're pulled back into it for whatever reason. So a lot of times I have found that low contact is a viable and good option, as well as gray rocking, where you're helping, you're doing what you can, but you're limiting how much information you give this other person. And that's a very valuable tool, a very valuable way to step into something and then step away again. So it is a lot about having your good boundaries in place, and boundaries are for you and what you will and will not allow or tolerate, and how you respond to situations. It is not necessarily at all for the other person to adhere to. It's for you to adhere to And so you know when you need to walk away or take a break or pause the conversation. So just remember that boundaries are for you and they're healthy and good. And if you don't have any, you need to establish some so that your sanity remains intact. I'm going to go back to no contact for a minute. And there are reasons why that is a viable option. But what does it take for you to get to that point? And these are questions I've had to ask myself and questions that are probably good to ask yourself. Is it a verbal situation that would cause you to go no contact? Is it physical? Like if someone hit you, would that be enough? Um, what if they decide to disown you? Maybe you've decided to disown them, or at a very minimal amount, or determine that you'll have very minimal contact with that person or no contact. Sometimes it comes down to that. And some of my personal experience includes someone having a decline, cognitive decline, to the point where they are accusing everyone around them of doing things that they perceive to be unethical or illegal. But the problem is, if someone is in active cognitive decline, is that they may not necessarily understand the ramifications of what they are saying or doing or acting out. And I do feel that there are times when, even in that situation, where you have to go no contact. And it's a matter of protecting yourself, your own family, your sanity, and your mental health. And I would say it is somewhat easier to go down that no contact path if you know your person, your loved one, is being cared for and managed in a environment where their needs are being met. And it's a very challenging decision to make, and it is not generally made with glee or joy. It's very difficult to reduce the contact that you have and then to diminish it to no contact. And I want to talk about this in particular when it comes to hoarding, because oftentimes the mental health issues that are happening for our loved one are unaddressed. They've gone on for years, and we are not necessarily the best people to intervene. And we may not be able to intervene with any amount of efficiency given the history that may be there. And I think sometimes we need permission to back away from difficult situations. And if you're needing that, consider this your permission, your peace being granted by stepping away. And another aspect, if you're in a low contact mode, is to think about if someone's calling you and say someone's calling you incessantly and you know their needs are met and you only have a certain amount of time in your day, it's perfectly fine to let those calls go to voicemail. You can answer the text when you have time, when you have the bandwidth to do so. And it is not like you are ignoring the situation. You are simply waiting until you have the mental ability in that moment to deal with whatever that situation is. The beautiful thing about a voicemail is you can listen to it and determine if there is a crisis of some sort that must be managed right now, or if it's simply something that can be managed later, or maybe someone else can deal with it. It does not necessarily have to be you. So um, it it's very important to look at what your needs are and how you're addressing them, and to have your good boundaries and to determine what is the best solution for you in your specific situation. And sometimes it helps me to write out my thoughts and get them out of my head. Sometimes it helps me to sleep because now my brain has some room to relax. And you may want to pro con low contact, no contact, minimizing how much information you share. And it doesn't mean you can't talk about your cat or the recipe you tried or something like that. Those are very neutral things in general, um, with someone that you're very low contact with. And you can have a conversation from time to time, perhaps. But it's helpful to know that you don't specifically have to address every situation right when it explodes in your face. So just take some time to think about that and consider what it is that you need to do for you. So thank you for stopping by Tuesdays with Tammi on the Hoarding Solution podcast, and I hope you have a great day.